Okay, great. Thank you. Um, but yeah, that's really powerful. And to be able to think like that on the spot, because relating it back to something that's more common, like you said, fruits and vegetables and meats, to give that concept. Yeah.
Right, right. So I'll find that
Mm-hmm.
paper. It's just it's a white paper, and it's
Mm-hmm.
actually part of the intervener training.
Okay.
Do you have children that are deaf blind in your school with multiple disabilities?
I'm not deaf blind. I've worked with students that are blind with multiple disabilities, but the students I've worked with are deaf with multiple disabilities, but not blind. But yeah,
Um,
cerebral palsy with
yeah,
severe behaviors. And she was 14 and never had language, never learned sign language. So when I started working with her as a signing para, I mean, it was a struggle, but every day, the more signs I taught her, the less behavior she had. It was amazing. Yeah, so that was amazing to see that,
hmm,
oh, here's language, and now she can communicate. Slow process, but we can see the growth for sure.
right, right, right,
Mhm.
right. Um, the intervener
Yes.
training too is really has really been amazing to understand how um, children can learn
Mhm.
more language. Because if you think about it, that in language in itself is a skill.
Yep. Exactly.
So how do we teach a concept? So, um, example, like for this young girl, that coming from the lens of experienced based.
Mhm.
So you go to the playground with this little girl, say, with this, right? Do you go to the playground or what? Like, what kind of things did you do with this little girl?
Yeah. I was with her, got her off the bus, put her on the bus. So yeah, playground, lunch, every class.
Good,
Mhm.
good, good. So sometimes what happens is school districts will use PECs,
Mhm. Yep. I'm familiar with that.
and many times it doesn't work with our kids.
Mhm. Like physical objects, like manipulatives, is what I found. Yeah, because just a picture is meaningless. So we're like, pick up something like this is a bear, this is a stuffed animal, like sign the bear, which is hard too because bears are real things too. So, but
Right,
I know, because she would sign them instantly. But yeah, was she meet like did she understand what that meant? She had a great
right.
memory, but yeah, exactly.
But so she was good at repeating things, but
Yes.
you don't know if she had the concept.
Yeah, I mean, we would show her the picture or the object, and she would sign it after lots of practice. But so it wasn't like repeating. I was repeating right away, but then once she got it, I could show her the picture or show her the object. She would sign it, but I don't think it was very meaningful.
It sounds like a little bit of ABA.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know, and that's
Right, right. And
exactly
so
what our school district
does
focuses on.
I
Yes.
I get it. I get
Mhm.
it. I've experienced it all, and I go into schools that do these strict like ABA. The ABA it definitely has a place,
Yeah.
and and many of the principles I understand, but working with deaf children,
Mhm.
I, I have just found it very different.
Yep.
So, for example, we want to teach somebody that we're going to go to the playground.
Mhm.
Okay. So we go to the playground and I observe what the student does at the
Mhm.
playground. So the playground at that time when we started this is my newest student. Excuse me. They were building and they had it's this plastic orange thing to hold,
Oh yeah. Yep. I
you
know
know
what
what I
you're talking
mean?
about. Yeah.
Okay. So he would touch that as we would go in.
Mhm.
So what I did was I clipped a piece of that, and that became the object
Yeah.
to go to the park because that was his experience. Now, another child the same park didn't I observed when I observed him at the park, what he went to was the swing, and they had this like plastic little thing
Mhm.
over the
Chain.
um,
The chain.
chain,
Yeah.
right? So I clipped a piece of that. That became his object
Mhm.
for his time.
Yeah.
So in working with the speech and language, so I did
Mhm.
that for all the activities.
Wow.
Now, one boy for a snack, he had a pudding, so we used a spoon because was that just made sense. But this
Mhm.
other boy doesn't use utensils at home. He
Mhm.
eats with his hands,
Wow.
but he had a napkin because he's from Somalia. They don't eat with it. So understanding their culture, where they come from.
Yeah.
So, but they had a special napkin that they always used. So I got that napkin. So that
Mhm.
napkin became his object to understand what's next. And I would
Mhm.
set up schedules, but the schedules were object schedules.
That's awesome.
This, yes. And this boy now is in, this boy that I started with um, in September was in second grade.
Mhm.
He's going to third grade. So he was in pre K, K, and first 3 years of them trying to teach a skill without the concept.
Wow.
So when I came and explained what we're going to do differently, we're just going
Mhm.
to work from the inside out differently. He now, I don't know how many objects he has, and
Mhm.
has now since graduated to pictures.
Mhm.
So he can now go to his wall and I say, tell me what you want, what do you want to do? And he goes and he'll grab the little helmet that we put on when we go for out bike riding. He'll go and get that and bring it to me. I'm like, oh, you want to go on the bike? Let's go.
Yeah.
We don't have
Wow.
any of the behaviors.
That's amazing. That really is.
Yeah. So and I've worked with a great BCBA
Mm.
that is actually now this BCBA is providing supports to other BCBAs
Mm.
around Maine and New England because she's like, we got to do it a little differently with deaf kids
Yeah.
that have no exposure to incidental learning.
Mhm.
So it was fascinating.
Wow. That's awesome. That's really cool. That makes a lot of sense too. Um, so just a random question. Do you think the ABA works for kids that aren't deaf that have severe behaviors, or that's more of the outside in?
I am not. I am not an expert in
Yeah.
ABA. I am not an expert.
Mhm.
I am I am just a person that has experienced it and had to deliver it.
Yeah.
And there are parts of it that I just do not understand.
Mhm.
Um, and when I sit down with BCBAs and we can talk about the work,
Yep.
um, then we
Yeah.
make the judgment that we make the adjustments. But I am not qualified.
Yeah. But
I would say that there are parts of it. If I had a son or a
mhm.
daughter, granddaughter with autism, I would definitely be at the table asking these questions.
Yeah.
I'd be asking I'd be asking specific questions.
Yeah.
There are parts of the program that I really like.
Mhm. Yeah, but it makes sense the way we did it was with the PEX cards too, with the tub and like did they get it right, did they not? And then but you're right, like the pictures are meaningless unless they so with the deaf student that I worked with, we would go outside and be like, okay, tree, like this is a tree, and then we sign it and that worked a lot better. But still like you didn't have all the objects right there in front of you, so that would have been more effective. But
But
yeah.
you wouldn't know what the objects are until you experience them with them.
Exactly.
So I had like a waitress
Mhm.
um, apron.
Mhm.
So I would carry my objects.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that so and because the thing is that and when I work with interpreters and mentoring interpreters, we are not allowed to sign no later.
Hmm.
Later means never.
Yep.
Later means you don't want to have the courage to say no.
Yep.
What does later mean? And when we're working with deaf plus kids, we got to think about those really vague words. And you will notice people default to later when they don't know what to do. Watch it. You'll see teachers do it. You'll see people do it. Later, 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 later.
Yeah. Yeah.
I say never. We cannot ever say later.
Yep.
If we know if it is indeed later, then we know when it is.
Yeah. Like music class is later or whatever.
But right. But we don't have to sign later because how is that helping them with their language?
Exactly. And
So how would you tell me music class is later?
Like today, yes, we do have music class today. But yeah, not really next, or having the picture schedule though, or the object schedule is going to show them. So pointing to that and referencing, hey, yes, we do have music, but it's later. Or not later, but it's coming up.
Yeah, right. So you can say it's coming after. So we can do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect.
Or set up a visual, visual tangible object schedule, whatever. But yes.
Yeah.
Because that's what we also do to deaf kids. We later them to death.
Yeah. Or I know we talked about more, like not to teach them to sign more, because what does that mean? And so asking for the specific, like cracker. And just,
so more, I have, because you get the more syndrome, right? More, 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 more. And they learn that more is getting them something.
Yeah.
So what I do is say more for food only, again for an activity.
Yeah. Okay. And then that makes sense. The no, like not using the word no. Yeah.
Because what does no mean? And no, for a lot of our kids, trigger words. No, come, go, sit, stop. Those are trigger words because that's what hearing people default to. When you ask them what they can sign, usually it's the commands.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if it's no, what does no mean? I mean, sometimes it has to be a strong no, but if we say no to everything, it doesn't have any emphasis on anything.
Yeah. Like for behaviors and things like that. But that's a trigger word, and it's just going to escalate the behaviors in my experience, I think. Saying no.
Right.
Yeah. But okay, yeah, that's awesome. So I'm kind of the opposite because I've been a para teacher assistant with kids with severe disabilities for 12 years. And so when I was working more as an educational interpreter, still technically assigning para, with kids that had less severe disabilities, more just emotional. So I would be signing and interpreting. But then I was with him because he needed the adapted assignments on his level because he was not at the grade level that he was in. And then the teacher of the deaf is like, why are you not interpreting? Why are you not interpreting? And I'm like, of course I want to be up there interpreting. Like, yes, I want to, but he's not understanding me just interpreting. Like, I need to simplify and summarize the directions for him. And sometimes I'm sitting next to him. So I'm kind of on the opposite because I want to do too much. And I know I want them to be able to, try on their own and then ask and advocate for themselves to have more help. But yeah, so that's why I'm kind of stuck in that part of having the opposite of just the role of an interpreter, because I'll be help other students if the student that I'm working with is all good, or I'll, help the teacher. And I don't want to do that too much, but it's hard to find like the balance. And it all depends on what the deaf student needs and, their cognitive and grade academic level and how much assistance they need and things like that.
Right. So when you talk to to the teacher of the deaf,
Mhm.
you can use language that she has understands. Fix and
Mhm.
count. This is really a fix and count.
Yep.
That if we look at, and then where are the domains for the deaf student themselves, psychosocial, you know,
Mhm.
linguistic, where are they at? Because
Mhm.
then that's why you can talk about why you do this with this particular student versus another.
Yeah.
And I encourage you, Lindsay, not to go to it's the role,
Yeah. Exactly.
because the role puts you in a box,
Mhm.
and it's also a way for you not to take ownership of the work. It's
Mhm.
you're out of role. That's not my role.
Yeah.
You
And
don't hear a principal saying that
right.
when
Right.
they're
And
outside with the bus.
yeah.
In education, it's very different.
Yeah. And if the student I'm working with is independent and they're having free time or whatever, and they're understanding the assignment, like I want to gain that rapport with the classroom teacher and help them
Right,
out. And
right.
so I think I'm too much out of the role just because of my experience with being so hands on with kids with disabilities throughout the years. So finding that
But
balance.
what if I say don't use that word role
Yeah.
ever?
Yeah.
So when you say, so now it's you're challenged now,
Mhm.
because when you say that I'm so involved in this way, I don't
Mhm.
want to be perceived as this.
Yeah.
If you don't use the word role,
Yep.
you're going to be able to articulate why it is that you're working in this particular way
Mhm.
and look at that as a continuum
Yep.
of the work.
Mhm.
But if you go to role, it
Yeah.
puts you
I love
already in a
that.
box and
Yeah.
makes something wrong.
Yep. Definitely. That makes sense.
Right, but it's going to take a lot of work,
Mhm.
because our profession, that's where they go.
Yeah.
But when an interpreter tells me I'm out of role, I'll ask them to define it.
Mhm.
What do you mean? What does that mean? Well, and they can't,
Mhm. Yep.
because it's just this carte blanche. If I say it's not in the role, everyone is going to understand, and it's going to put all the ownership onto you.
Yep. And yeah, teachers don't necessarily understand the role, And so yeah, I think I'm too much out of the role. And I don't want, teachers that I haven't worked with, to go have the perspective of me as a assigning para or just a para because everyone knows me as that. You know what I mean? So it's kind of
But
hard.
I'm still going to challenge you. I'm
Mhm.
still going to challenge you. Make it less about you and
Yes.
more about the student.
Yep.
Don't use the word role.
Mhm.
So when you go into another classroom,
Yep.
and the responsibilities and the expectations in the student is different,
Mhm.
then that's what's going to dictate how you do your work.
Yep. What's best for the student and using
And
that
and
language.
you're the classroom interpreter.
Mhm.
And that's another thing, is that if you say I'm an interpreter for this student,
Mm. Yep.
you're not. You're the classroom interpreter.
Yep.
So you're working for everybody in that classroom.
Mhm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah,
I
because
mean, your responsibility is the student, and to
yeah.
make sure that the student is this, but you are part of the whole.
Yeah, because if a, another student asks me a quick question, of course I'm going to answer it or help them really quickly. Or if I'm the student I'm working with, earned the 5 minutes free time at the end of class, I can go around and ask other students
Right,
if
and
they
you
need
can
help.
find out you find out from the teacher,
Yeah.
what can I do? And
Mhm.
you have that relationship with the teacher,
Mhm. I
because
know.
how many things do the teachers do that are not in their role,
Oh yeah.
right?
Exactly.
But you
Uh-huh.
won't hear a teacher say, that's not my role.
Yeah.
I come from a family of educators. So my
Uh-huh.
daughter is an educator.
Yep.
And And it's so interesting to me that interpreters default to this when they
Mhm.
can't even really articulate it. When you
Exactly.
understand what your role is contingent on the environment and the student,
Mhm.
that is not black and white. You're
Mhm.
not the mother of the student, of course, and
Mhm.
and they all the ethical things and
Yeah.
the moral things. The black and white, no, you're not going to invite the student over to your house for a barbecue. Very easy. I mean, those decisions are very easy.
Yeah.
But what happens when you have a right versus right?
Yes. That's hard.
So, so I
Thinking of.
encourage you to look at that work
Mhm.
because it will validate everything that we've talked about earlier when we first came on,
Mhm.
your feelings, and it will help you with language to articulate and explain not only to the teachers and stuff staff that you're
Mhm.
working with and help bridge it to the deafness, but also within your profession.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when it's a right versus right decision, thinking of the resulting demands and the concurrent demands, like what else is part of the goal in that setting, thinking of resulting demand, like what would happen if this happened, if we choose this decision and things like that, and using the DCS model because we have that knowledge now. So that's amazing that we can do that. Yeah.
That's right. Knowledge is power.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
look within the profession of interpreting,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
because that's foundational. But also look outside of interpreting, like
Mm-hmm.
when learning and understanding about trauma, learning and understanding about the system of special ed, and what had to happen for your students to get into that classroom.
Mm-hmm.
It's horrible.
Oh yeah.
What parents have to do, they have to continuously fail
Mm-hmm.
in order to get in, and then the student gets in there and they don't do what they're supposed to do, and it's
Yeah.
the way the system is set up. So
Yeah, and it's hard when parents don't have that knowledge or power, so they're not sure what to do, and I just want to tell them, like, you know I want to help them in that way, and I know that's not always the right role for me. Not role. I don't
yeah,
usually use that word. But
but
yeah,
it is, I know, and you're gonna, because
I know.
now you're gonna be like, oh my god, when you say it you're gonna think of Tracy.
Yeah.
But 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 what is, where
Mhm.
is it your responsibility?
Yeah.
What would you do in that?
Mhm.
You see parents struggling, you see
Mhm.
that, what would you do?
I mean, I would maybe talk to the teacher of the deaf and see if they could speak to them because I know that's going out of confidentiality and things like that. And so encouraging them to reach out to them because I've seen the opposite end when parents have that knowledge, it is power and they can get whatever they want because they threaten to sue, and the school district doesn't want to do that. And so, but oftentimes I see with the students I work with that their parents are low income and just trying to survive and don't have the knowledge of what the accessibility that they deserve and that they are a legal right to.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, y- yes, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
You have absolutely a responsibility. You are an adult in that classroom.
Mm-hmm.
You can share resources. Now, Hands and Voices is
Mm-hmm.
very is in Colorado. I think
Yep.
it even may have even started in Colorado, or the directors in Colorado.
Yep.
So, does your teacher of the deaf know about Hands and
Mm-hmm.
Voices?
Yep.
Does your classroom know about Hands and Voices? You can join and get flyers sent.
Mm-hmm. I am a member.
So, being able to share those resources
Yep.
because they do have parent advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
So, because the parents are struggling and just trying to get up in the morning and get out the door to go go to work, um, we need to support those parents
Yeah.
and how to support those parents. Now, I've worked with TODs that within an area
Mhm.
that we had parent groups, and
Mhm.
we had then the staff in our program, all of us provide the daycare.
Mhm. Oh, awesome.
So because these parents can't send their children to a babysitter, can't
Yeah.
send their children over to camp for a couple of weeks. So
Mhm.
when we come, and that also understanding that trauma lens, you will come from a place of heart for the parents.
Yeah.
You will come from
Absolutely.
a place of heart.
Mhm.
So that was just another thing that we did because I felt the same way. Is
Mhm.
that our parents are not advocating, and the school is not going to, say, okay, let's go ahead and do this.
Mhm.
But we did it on our own with our teacher of the DAF. We had an
Yeah.
information thing, and then the staff, all of us staff said, and we'll do the babysitting and hang out in the gym while this was going on.
Yeah.
So we had somebody come and speak about what their rights are.
That's amazing. Yeah, I fought for 2 years for the student that worked with the most with severe was deaf with severe disabilities because they wouldn't provide even a signing para for her. They just said,
Hmm.
"Oh, we need to just focus on the behaviors." And she's physically, you can tell that she has cerebral palsy, so they just focused on that. When, of course, if she has communication language, those behaviors are going to decrease. And which is the other part, which I don't want to go into funding, but signing paras know another language, not completely fluent, or fluent, but not an educational interpreter, and they are getting paid less than just the paras that just work with, um, students with Down syndrome or less intense students. So that's hard because we can't get in quality signing paras that want to come because they get paid only like $11 an hour, you know? So that's the other part that's hard because we have so many students that do have severe disabilities that are deaf. It's crazy, becoming more prevalent in our school district. And I think it's really cool that a lot of people are moving to Fort Collins because of the school district here with the special education and integrated services program. And then we also have respite care, which I was talking about, where I worked for 10 years, and it's 24 hours where with kids with disabilities can go, spend the night if their parents work night shift or just after school program, and the school district will bus there and everything. So we are lucky for that. But some kids, if they're really severe, they can't go because it's a one-on-one situation. But there's so many kids that you don't want to. So that's another hard piece. And so I just want to help those families so much, you know. And I do, and I know, like they'll ask me in the summer if I will provide daycare, and I've done that in the past. It's something that I don't want to do now because I want to eventually work at Sorensen in the summer or something like that. But I know that's probably not but we all are like that because we just want to help the families. But I mean, it's not during a school, I'm not taking them to school or anything like that. It's the summer when they're
Right,
little.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. I
Hmm.
understand. I understand the complications and understand the frustrations.
Hmm.
And where it's going to change is the more the parents are um,
Advocating.
advocating and educated.
Yes,
They're afraid. They're
exactly.
afraid.
Yeah, because
They're
they're
afraid.
they're so grateful for what they're getting. They don't want
Right.
to. Hmm.
Right.
And
Um,
then this is another. Well, and I was going to go back to the advocating for that student. What I end up doing is requesting for my attendance and participation in their IEP. And I
mhm.
wrote a letter beforehand, and I was able to, explain coming from language and my experience of being in the program. And so finally, they were able to provide a one-on-one signing pair with her, which was amazing because when she started learning the language again, her behaviors decreased. And this is another layer is COVID because many of those students have health um, a lot of health, if they get sick once, they're in the hospital for 3 months. And so of course their parents want to keep them home, but then I can't imagine, they're not sitting in front of a computer, you know. It's just, oh my gosh, I know it's another, you know, hours long conversation, but and so many of them are staying homeschooled because, and even though they're going back to in person here since January. And so that's just so hard. Um, for them.
It does feel overwhelming.
Hmm.
It does feel overwhelming.
Yeah. So hopefully with time
So,
they can feel more comfortable with sending them to school because I mean what I understand them not wanting health problems, but at the same time they need education and to be learning
right.
language. And yeah, so it's definitely a passion of mine. um
Well, I hear it, and
yeah.
that excites me because we need for our deaf and kids,
Mhm.
we need trained professionals like yourself
Mhm.
to be able to go in and support these children.
Yep.
Now, this special ed director, I hear it all the time, would never, ever, ever say and never, never hire a child with Down syndrome speaks and hears English.
Mhm.
Would never put them with somebody that doesn't have any English and is going to speak German.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, so when that comes to me, and I hear it um, more times than we really should,
Yeah.
is that, well, they don't need that. So being very mindful of the person's position
Mhm.
is just to be able to bridge and ask, so that hearing children with the disabilities, hearing children, would it be okay if we just didn't talk to them?
Mhm. Exactly.
Would it be okay if we just showed them pictures and
Mhm.
we just decided that um, that's how it's going to be?
Mhm.
And they look and they say, "Of course not." And I said, "That is what you're asking,
Mhm.
honestly, of this particular student."
Exactly. That's a perfect comparison and supporting argument.
Right.
Wow.
So, and when is inclusion exclusion?
I know. I.
When is inclusion exclusion?
Mhm.
So they say, well, it's inclusion and everybody is all together. But when is it exclusion? When you don't share a language. And
Exactly.
it is so primal to be
Mhm.
able to communicate that nobody thinks about it.
Yep.
Nobody thinks about it. But foundationally, that's what everything is built on.
Mhm.
But it is so, they don't even think about it. They
Mhm.
just assume
Yep.
either you have it or you don't. So and these are special ed.
Exactly.
You're like,
I know. I see
I went
that.
to a special ed. I was asked to speak at a special ed and a professor, and we were talking because they were talking about deaf kids being mainstreamed and blah, 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 blah. And then I put on the board, when is inclusion exclusion?
Mhm.
And the special ed director started to sweat, who was the professor. I said, when?
Uh-huh.
And this class are like looking at me. I said, when you can't talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And the
Exactly.
special ed director was just like, OMG, that's not the twist that I thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
Um, so that's what happens to our kids. So
Mhm. Yeah. Wow. I'm so glad we've got to meet because I mean, I'm meeting more people that have and are working with or deaf and I like that.
yeah, yeah, but yeah, it's still out for debate. My
Yeah, I
husband
like
said.
that because we've always have learned person first. So the student with autism or the student with Down syndrome. And so when I first started,
And that's changing.
is it?
It is.
What's it changing to?
People with autism are saying that's who I am.
I've heard that too. Yeah.
So
So it's
like deaf people,
mhm,
people don't want to deaf people don't want to be called as, a person with a hearing disability.
exactly. And
They're like that's their identity. So
yeah.
the autism community is
Mhm.
pretty vocal, and they're going to actually, the whole speak up, or that whole
Spread the
that
word.
autism organization. What
Oh,
is that?
is
They're
it?
giving these organizations a run for their money. The
Yeah.
ABA is going to be changing in 10 years. It's going to look different. It
Yeah.
totally is, because when this started 10, 12 years ago,
Mhm.
whenever it started, these are now adults saying, "Are
Mhm.
you kidding me? You're
Exactly.
kidding me."
Yeah.
So it's going to evolve like
Yeah.
everything.
And I've heard that because they like deaf people, they don't see it as a disability. Like they're proud of their culture and language.
Who
So
they are.
when I first started the program, or even ASL one class, when they said deaf people or deaf individuals, I'm like a person that is deaf, and then I'm like, oh, then learned the culture and things. And then my sister, she's a school psychologist and works with special ed, and she proofread a paper for me, and she's like, this is wrong, you can't say this, like you've got to use person first. I'm like, no, and had to explain that because yeah, that's amazing that it's changing too for others.
It is changing, and that it's the responsibility of other professionals to be involved with the community. That
Mhm.
only shows that they're at the peripheral. They don't
Exactly.
understand what's going on. So the school psychologists, the teachers of the deaf,
Mhm.
if they're stuck in this box
Mhm.
and not with an open mind, open heart, then they're not going to understand that these things. And this is where it goes south for our kids that don't have a
Mhm.
voice.
Exactly. Yeah, because they're so stuck in that ways that they believe that it's the right thing, but they're not keeping up with what's emerging and progressing in the world and with those groups. So,
Yeah.
oh my
And
gosh,
I don't want to be that person. I
no,
don't want to be that person like, oh, she's so stuck in her time.
yeah, no,
It's just that we have to, we as a professional, it is our professional responsibility
hmm
to be on top of what's going
yeah,
on
keep learning because things
and to
are
keep
always
learning.
changing. Lifelong learner. I want to
Well,
respect your time, so thank you
yeah, I have
so
another
much.
student.
Yeah,
I have another student right now, but feel free to email me if
I would
you
love
have
to.
something. I'll look for that concept and
That'd be great.
skill.
The white
It's just it's a white
white
paper, but
paper.
it was pretty profound for me
Yeah, thank you so
to help
much.
me understand. You
Yeah,
take care. I wish you well.
thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Mhm.